We'll start right there. The war in Gaza has reportedly killed 10,000 people or more on both sides. The Israel Defense Forces are now on the ground hunting the terrorists of Hamas in Gaza, looking in the tunnels and beneath hospitals where civilians are used routinely as human shields. Block by block and piece by piece, the IDF is systematically targeting every terrorist they can find and delivering swift and final justice. But the war is not popular on the world stage or with many of the neighbors of the Jewish state, even those that have been at peace with Israel for generations. Even so, the war is continuing, and talk of a ceasefire is being shot down by those at the highest levels of the Israeli government. Here's Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Herzog, on that topic. Listen.
So I want to distinguish between a pause for a few days in order to get hostages released and a ceasefire. The Prime Minister was referring to a ceasefire. We are against ceasefire because that would allow Hamas to retain power, to regroup, to rearm, and strike again.
But it would be a ceasefire for a few days?
This is
that the difference?
We're talking about pausing the fighting for a few days so we can get the hostages out.
That is, if the hostages are still alive. Reports are that some hostages have already been found dead, but I guess we'll see how true a lot of these reports are in the near future. It won't take much longer, but still, many in the Western world oppose what Israel is doing to defend itself. They see it as a massive power imbalance, and the outcry is being heard on the streets of London, Paris, plus New York and Washington here at home. But it is not discouraging the IDF or its mission to destroy Hamas at all costs, and weighing whether a strike on Iran or Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon is in order too. Here's Herzog on that.
So let me say, every loss of human life, Israeli or Palestinian, is a tragedy. We are not after innocent civilians. We are after the terrorists who have been hiding behind civilians. I would be very careful about Hamas numbers. All the numbers you hear coming out of Gaza are Hamas numbers. Nobody really knows how many people died there. There's no denying that there is collateral damage, that the civilians died, but nobody knows how many. And you and I don't know.
So the collateral damage, the children.
You don't know, and I don't know how many of them are terrorists and how many of them are civilians. Nobody really knows. I can tell you that.
Well, you certainly don't think the children are terrorists.
Never said that, never implied that. And there are children there. But in the overall numbers, I don't know and you don't know how many of them are terrorists and how many of them are innocent civilians.
The ambassador forced to correct her in real time. He never said anything about children being terrorists. Terrible thing for her to do. For those in the region, these past 6 weeks, however, have been very tense. And despite the claims by Israel that they are not targeting civilians, and certainly not children, their neighbors remain on edge. The Jordanian ambassador to the United States says the ongoing war is angering the people of Jordan, which has had a peace treaty in place for more than 30 years with Israel. There's the concern of a widening regional war. Listen to this.
I wouldn't say the word destabilizing, but it is putting a lot of pressure on His Majesty and on the government because people are angry. They see the images every day. I mean, we're all angry. It's very humiliating. It's very hurtful, and it's inhuman. And we're just wondering how far is this going to go. We're calling for a ceasefire. We're calling to go back to negotiations. And as the senator said, the only way to be pro-Israeli is to ask for peace, and the only way to be pro-Palestinian is to ask for peace. And this is common grounds for both of us. So we need to go further on that. And on the settlers, just as a word in the West Bank, the settlers are going haywire, unhinged, and are not caring about the law, and nobody's able to stop them. Every day there are 8 attacks on Palestinians, and they are mistreating them, humiliating them, sending videos all over social media of them naked, and in situations that are unacceptable.
Now, how much of this conversation from surrounding countries like Jordan is bluster? How much of it is real? We know that Hezbollah has already started attacking from South Lebanon into Israel. Not a full ground invasion, but shooting rockets routinely, dozens of drones as well in Israel's direction. Iran has said some things that signal that they could want to involve themselves more directly in the war too, but they say that quite a bit. So is this actually going to be a flashpoint or just more chutzpah? Much of the talk these past several days has been on the idea of a military pause for a few days anyway. But as you've heard, the push by those on the left for a total ceasefire does not appear likely. and that leaves the fate of more than 200 hostages in doubt. Their fate completely uncertain right now. In fact, U.S. officials have no idea at all as to how many hostages are being held in Gaza by the terrorist group Hamas. They believe there are still some Americans alive and being held, but they can't be sure on what those numbers are. Here's what they said.
Are you confident that the majority of the hostages are alive? Hamas has said they are not holding all of them. Other groups are holding those hostages. Do you have any clarity on who is holding what hostages?
So this is not something about which we have perfect clarity. Obviously, we are relying on others who have been in touch with Hamas. The United States government does not speak directly with them. But we do believe that a significant number, and most likely the majority and even the vast majority of hostages are alive. We are certainly operating under that assumption, and we are going to work to get as many of them out, certainly including, by the way, a number of Americans who we believe are held hostage as we can. But we do not have perfect clarity. We are not on the ground. We are not in direct contact with Hamas, but we believe, based on their representations, that there are a significant number of hostages who could be released if this deal is completed.
And this fight in Gaza, this debate back and forth with Israel and Hezbollah and Hamas and how many hostages there are, all of this infighting has caused a separation inside the Democrat Party, too. In fact, it's the first time since Joe Biden took office that he is at odds with the fringe left of his party.